Niall, what's in your notes today?
Glad you asked, Robbie, because it has been a bleak few days for Americans who fear President Trump and fear what he might do to the fabric of democracy. That's because two big names caved to Trump's threats. I'm talking about the law firm of Paul-Weiss and about Columbia University. But I'm also talking about something bigger, the absolute certainty that cowardice is contagious. Almost 60 years ago, Robert F. Kennedy Sr. spoke about how every time any person stood up for an ideal, a new ripple of hope was sent forth. Together, those ripples can sweep down the mightiest wall of oppression and resistance, Kennedy said. But the reverse is also true. Ripples of fear and complicity, well, they send their message as well. It's a message that makes the powerful more bold and their targets more feeble. Let's talk Paul-Weiss first. It's a huge law firm with more than 1,000 lawyers, and it appears to have offended Trump because of its work on January the 6th related cases and because a former partner had worked on the New York investigation delving into his finances. A Trump executive order earlier this month stripped security clearances from Paul-Weiss staff, denied them the use of government facilities, and ordered the review of any federal contracts, even with clients of the firm. Put more simply, Trump was threatening to put them out of business. Now, Paul-Weiss is not unique in that regard. Trump has also targeted Perkins Coie, which represented Hillary Clinton back in the 2016 campaign. And he's taken aim at Covington and Burling because of its association with former special counsel Jack Smith. Perkins Coie at least showed some spine. It won a temporary restraining order against the president. A furious Trump administration is now demanding that the judge who issued that order be booted from the case. No dissent, after all, can be tolerated. Paul-Weiss showed no such fight. First, its chairman traipsed up to the White House for a meeting with Trump. Soon enough, the firm agreed to a deal which includes providing $40 million of pro bono work to causes the Trump administration supports and hiring an outside expert to audit its hiring practices. The White House also said that the firm's chairman, Brad Karp, acknowledged wrongdoing by that former partner I mentioned. The firm hasn't confirmed that, but it hasn't denied it either. Mark Pomerantz, the man in question, denies any such wrongdoing. Trump has lifted his threat for now, but the timid refusal of the law firm to stand up for itself is frightening. Paul-Weiss's revenues last year were more than $2.6 billion, according to Law 360. If people with those resources don't stand up for fundamental principles, who will? Paul-Weiss is rightly getting blasted for the move. Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse wrote on social media, "When lawyers so well paid and connected take a dive, it's shaming." George Conway, a well-known Trump foe, called Paul-Weiss's actions a capitulation and the most disgraceful action by a major law firm in my lifetime. Mark Zaid, a prominent lawyer who specializes in whistleblower cases, told me that a, quote, horrible message was being sent by the firm's surrender. And now to Columbia. The university had incurred Trump's wrath for being too lenient in his view with regard to pro-Palestinian demonstrations. President Trump threatened to cut federal funding to the Ivy League school. It immediately buckled, academic freedom be damned. One concession was especially disgraceful. The Trump administration wanted Columbia to put the department that is home to Middle East studies into receivership. The college dodged the word receivership, but it conceded on substance. A newly appointed administrator will review programs about the Middle East. What a dismal reality we have unfolding. A president is holding a leading university to ransom, dictating what it should teach, and the university has folded. Some defenders of the deal point to the amount of money Trump was threatening to take away, $400 million. But at the last count, Columbia's endowment was worth $14.8 billion. Just as with Paul-Weiss, a wealthy institution folded like a cheap suit. Its sellout was egregious enough that some pretty disparate voices condemned it. Cynthia Nixon wrote that the institution had caved to fascism. Glenn Greenwald saw the outcome as part of a push to have Americans sacrifice the country's core values and civil liberties for this one sacred foreign country, namely Israel. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary who also served as president of Harvard, wrapped the two cases I've talked about together. Summers said he was profoundly saddened and alarmed by Columbia University and Paul-Weiss law firms' capitulation to the increasingly dictatorial Trump administration. Let's be clear, that's no exaggeration. A president with an aberrational view of how his power can be used and abused has a pliant Congress behind him, a social media echo chamber roaring its approval, backed by the richest man in the world shaking his pom-poms. Now, almost daily, Trump wields his power to try to bring dissenters to heel. Civil servants, the media, the academy, law firms, judges. They're all under a barrage of attacks. And the truly scary thing is they might lose. Of course, if they don't fight, they'll lose for sure. And then where will we be? Where we are now, in deep and dark, uncharted waters.
Yeah, there's a lot that the Trump administration is doing in this regard that I don't approve of, that I don't think is a good use of the administration's time, for one thing, and will present all sorts of legal challenges. You know, I might say this can be what comes of having private entities massively subsidized by the government one way or the other, is that eventually gives the government power over you. This is why I generally object to such subsidizing and funding, because even a administration ostensibly of my side as the right-leaning person can have some kind of pernicious influence that I would not want them to have. And so I think it's a shame that Columbia is caving in this regard. The law firm, I have followed all the details of this case not quite as closely, and you know, there's some of the things you mentioned. Why do they have access to government facilities? What security clearances they have that I don't know, it might be proper to change or not change. However, I agree with you overall that Trump going after these people for sheer revenge is not a good exercise of his power. I think it is also just interesting, the lack of, for the law firm in particular, that they don't want to fight back. Also the media companies that didn't want to fight back when they were sued. You know, 8 years ago, when Trump came after you, correct me if you think my impression here is wrong, didn't progressives or Democrats welcome a fight with Trump? Wasn't that good for fundraising and for optics and for energizing the base? You know, the ACLU, I know in particular, raised tons and tons and tons of money vowing to fight immigration orders and such other things. And the Democratic base, I think, is hungering for a fight. None of their elite institutions or law forms or schools or media apparatuses want a battle with Trump. What has happened such that capitulation to Trump, because I mean, I agree, frankly, in many cases, this capitulation is preferable to doing what all the people on your side ostensibly want. Yeah. It's a weird situation we're living in.
It is very disorienting in many ways. I think you have to separate out abstract arguments as well from the specifics. So if you were to say, for example, well, should the government be giving a private university $400 million? There are dangers that come with that. Okay, perhaps there are, perhaps there aren't. In relation to the law firms, obviously a big law firm is going to have clients who do business with the government.
And the government has to do contracting of services because the government provides some services.
Yeah, exactly. And if the government is putting a target on the back of a particular law firm or trying at the president's behest to put a particular law firm out of business, that strikes me as just absolutely impossible to justify, because then you're using the powers of the presidency to try to squash dissent and to punish people who have crossed you in some way. And if there is any suggestion of illegality on people's part, then the appropriate venue to prosecute that is the criminal courts. This is not a situation here. This is a situation where Trump is citing, for example, a separate law firm that represents or has assisted Jack Smith and has just decided to try to use the powers of government to crack down on a private enterprise.
Yes, I suppose I wish the subsidizing or the giving hundreds of millions of dollars to institutions that was not being taken away for vindictive reasons.
Right.
It's clearly being taken away for vindictive reasons.
Right.
I don't know where that leaves me if I support the result but not the vindictive nature of it. I think also it would be less subject to legal challenge if it was not so clearly vindictive, and that would be my practical advice to the Trump administration as it goes about having these battles, that you will squander a certain amount of goodwill and you will face court challenges, and then I don't want to hear any whining from any Republicans that, oh, we can't get our way because judges are blocking us. If you do it improperly, they will block you. Right. Do it properly while you actually control the levers of government.
Right, and judges have absolutely the right to adjudicate cases in accordance with their view of the law, and if you think they're wrong, there's the appellate court process to pursue that, as John Roberts said. Not often that myself and John Roberts are on the same page, but there we go.
Oh, well, but conservatives deem him and Amy Coney Barrett were deep state liberal progressive operatives all along, Niall.
That's the Amy Coney Barrett thing just blows my mind. Yeah. Such a deeply conservative woman who's now this traitor to the conservative
We'll see if the New Republic is still saying nice things about her when those cases actually make their way to the Supreme Court, and then she rules in the way they don't want.
I would
She's
assume.
Just not jumped ahead in the queue with the eagerness that Republicans want. I still suspect she would ultimately be ruling that way, and then we'll see if the strange new respect holds. Up next, there has been a battle, particularly on the right on social media, over food stamp benefits. We will discuss that. It's very fascinating. More Rising right after this.